morning, friends. I won't stand between you and the keynote speaker, Gopi Kalayal. Gopi is from Kerala. He is from Trichur. Actually, he is from Palgad, but his parents currently are in Trichur. So he's a typical Mallu, but long away from the God's own country for a very long time. He is a graduate in electrical engineering from REC Trichy, an MBA from IIM Calcutta, followed up with another MBA from Wharton Business School. He started his career with McKinsey & Company and has been involved in two venture capital supported startups in Silicon Valley. And now he is with, like we say, Mada Pida Guru Devam. Even a 3-year-old is now telling Mada Pida Google Devam. So he is with Google as the chief brand evangelist. And the key thing with Gopi is globetrotter, and he travels a lot, but he has unlike many of us, including me, he has a good balance in life. He is a yoga practitioner. I think I don't know whether you run marathon, Gopi, but you run marathon? Yeah, okay. It's not there in the CV, so I didn't know that, but he's an athlete himself. So without much wastage of time, I would request Gopi Kalayal, please put your hand together for Gopi Kalayal for his keynote address. And since it's a keynote address, we will not be entertaining Q&A, but Gopi will be available at least right till lunch for you to have any questions. I'm sure you will be having many questions to Gopi. Over to Gopi now. Thank you and have a good session.
Thank you, MSA. So this conference is about entrepreneurship, right? So most of you are entrepreneurship of some kind, and which means you're comfortable with risk, you're willing to experiment, and the theme of this conference today is disruption. So let's try a small social experiment trying to understand disruption. How many of you like Bollywood dancing? Raise your hand if you like doing Bollywood dancing. Okay, all those who raised your hand, please stand up. Okay. Yeah, everyone who raised it, don't be afraid because this is about, and come forward to the front of the stage. So what we're going to, because it's all about an experiment, right? And I can join you down there as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to make these people dance while the rest of you watch. How does that sound? How do you feel when I make you do that? Scary, right? Actually, we'll disrupt the rules again. Those of you sitting there and laughing, saying, thank God I didn't raise the hand, I'm going to make you all dance, and these will be the judges since they are the experts. How does that sound now? Okay? I told you we'll disrupt. It's a social experiment. Please stand up. And I'm going to teach you how to do Bollywood dancing today right here because we're going to shake things up a little bit, okay? So follow me along as I guide you. I'm not the best, and everybody can do it. Can we have some good Bollywood music, please? AJ, put your hand up, and then you raise the roof, okay? But the roof is uneven, so you go this way. One hand up, one hand up. 1, 2. You might as well do something useful because we're entrepreneurs, so screw some light bulbs, okay? But there are many light bulbs. It's a big room, so kind of turn around and look around. Okay? Move your body as well, your legs. Turn the other way now. Remember, uneven roof, turn the other way. All right, we can just stop with that now. Stop the music, take your seats. So what I did was a quick demo of innovating through disruption. Because I had this idea last night, we should do something. The energy was low in the room. So part of innovation is to experiment quickly. So I conducted a quick experiment. We didn't wait too long, no PowerPoint presentation. Let's try it. And the experiment quickly gives you the data. The data tells me all of you are terrible Bollywood dancers. You would not make it through an audition, including myself. But the experiment through disruption also yields some good information for the future. And the good information I got today was when I looked at MSA Kumar, who invited me to do the keynote, he looked so horrified. His wife was glaring at him that I know I'll never get invited back to this session. So that is the useful information I got out of it. But all seriousness, there is so much of changes that are taking place rapidly with technology being an enabler and making the world work in a way that we could not have anticipated. Let me show you one example. Last Friday, it's actually 2 Fridays ago, a singular video went live on YouTube around midnight UK time, and it was this video. Let me play 20 seconds of this video for you and make a point after that. Sister called you 1,000 times, but you're never at home, and it clearly don't matter because it doesn't tear you up anymore. How many of you watched this video? Raise your hand if you know what. About 5, 6 of you, right? So this is English singer-songwriter Adele, who released a single called Hello 2 Fridays ago as part of her new album, 25. She released it on Friday, midnight London time, and I watched these trends as part of my job. In the next 24 hours, this video had been watched 27.7 million times. That is more than the population of Australia. In fact, it was being watched about 1 million per hour. At peak times, 1.6 million it had gone up to. 2 weeks later, I looked up the number last night as I was coming here. This video has now been watched more than 250 million times. That is the equivalent of the fourth largest country in the world. Behind India, China, US is Adele's video views. Not only that, along the way what happened is the end of the first week, the number of videos that were actually purchased, the number of songs of this single that was actually purchased has crushed all other previous records. This is in an era where people actually don't buy music anymore. She sold more copies of the single through the strategy of giving up this video free, and she set a record a week later of the sales of a single. And then, if you look at her album 25, it is not even available. Only on November 20 you'll actually buy. The pre-order for the album, which is about to come out on November 25, has already broken all records. And if you look underneath it, what she did was, if she had to do, or if her producer had to do this 10 years ago, they would have to sign contract with MTV in the US, with Star TV in India, with NHK in Japan, with BBC in UK, etc. This time what she did is one single video she pushed out onto YouTube, and in an instant, kids from Bombay, Boston, and Barcelona were simultaneously watching it, telling all their friends and family, and that's what drove 250 million views. That has completely disrupted the way we consume music and media content. Now, you might look at this and say, well, this is Adele. She's won 3 Grammy Awards. Everyone knows her. You would expect something like this from her. Wrong answer. Completely unknown musicians and talent can actually take advantage of this behavior. Because what Adele did is now available for you as an entrepreneur in Cochin, meaning if you create a good enough, say, application for a mobile platform, and you place it on a platform like the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store, in an instant, it is now available to 1 billion users of those platforms around the world. And you've found a global marketplace, right? That is the opportunity in front of you. So instead of Adele, let's switch to a completely unknown musician. This person, some of you may know her. 3 years ago, none of you would have known her. Her name is Lindsey Stirling. And she plays the violin, but in an unusual way. She doesn't sit down and play the violin like violinists do. She doesn't even stand. She dances when she plays. She stands on one leg and moves around wherever she plays. In 2011, I was speaking at TEDx Berkeley at the University of California, and I was in the green room waiting for my turn to go on stage when I found this very attractive and very nice young woman in the green room with an interesting hairstyle, which I later learned is called the crow's nest, practicing, warming up on her violin. So I asked herself what she was doing, and she introduced herself as Lindsey Stirling, and she said she's also speaking on the TEDx stage after me, and she's going to perform and speak. So she was just getting ready for her act. She's warming up. So play a few seconds of a video. She's got this very interesting style. So later during speaker dinner, I sat next to Lindsey and we were having a conversation, and I asked her a story. And clearly she had raw talent, but she had no musical commercial success. She had tried to get, a month before that, some fame by going on America's Got Talent, and it was a completely humiliating experience for her, like reality TV often is. She had come back, she was depressed at the time, she had an eating disorder, and she was struggling with all of that. So we talked a little bit about if she had tried using digital media, social media, platforms like Facebook, and she was just about getting started. She was learning those platforms and trying to build it. At that point, she didn't have a single record. She had never done a ticketed show. She hadn't sold a single ticket ever in her life in a musical performance. This was 2011, February. Fast forward to December 2011, Lindsey's video, this one, it's called Crystallize, became one of the top 10 videos on YouTube for that year. That is phenomenal because Every minute now, 400 hours worth of video gets uploaded on a platform like YouTube. To stand above all of that and become a top 10 is incredible. And she did this without a single recording contract. She didn't have an agent. She didn't have a music company behind her. But because she had raw talent, the audience discovered her, and they were telling each other and carried on the platform on the shoulders of her audience, which discovered her talent. This became a top 10 video. That same year, at the YouTube Music Awards, she performed with John Legend, the song which you might have heard, All of Me Loves All of You, where she plays the violin with John Legend playing the piano. And now, if you fast forward, this past September, she had come to San Francisco to perform. She's touring the world. Every ticket sold out. I couldn't get tickets. Her manager had to give me a complimentary ticket so I could go meet her. So even unknown artists like this, they've disrupted the way music used to be or media and entertainment used to work. And these are just two examples, and I wanted to start with this. But this sort of behavior, this sort of dramatic change is actually touching every aspect of our life, even in a way we are not even recognizing it. But it's seeped into our everyday life. Complete industries are getting disrupted. So I'll give you an example of how it flowed through my life this past February. In February, I was in France to meet with some of our Google customers, specifically L'Oreal and Decathlon. And I know you'd know both brands because I saw a Decathlon store on the way from here to Alwai. They've entered the US market. And the new CEO, Mikhail, actually was meeting with him, lives in India because he thinks this is going to be the center of a lot of their growth. So after that, I had some time, so I stayed on for the weekend just to enjoy Paris a little bit before going back. And I had asked a friend of mine, Murray, to come and pick me up and spend some time going around. So Murray picks me up at my hotel, and she suggested that we go to a yoga class and then go to a jazz club for some jazz music. And I said, fine, I'll let her take charge. So she pulled out her phone, and a couple of clicks, she had ordered an Uber service. And then I got into the Uber. So she used an Android phone, ordered an Uber service, and I was watching this French African immigrant driver take us to our destination. And he was navigating his way through Google Maps on an iPhone. We got us there. No money to be exchanged. Payment takes care automatically. On the way to the yoga class, Murray also pulled out an app and made a reservation for 2 spots for us in the yoga class. When we got there, it was an English yoga instructor, who had a little gadget on her iPhone, and through using Square, she took our payment. All of this happened seamlessly. And I just watched those transactions, and I said I was astonished, because there was an Android phone, an iPhone, Google Maps, Uber service, Square as a payment mechanism, and all of these products did not exist 10 years ago. All of those products had completely gone on to are disrupting the respective industry. With Google Maps, the entire map printing industry is now kind of changed. With products like Square, the payment mechanism, credit card, the old-fashioned way of payment has been changed. The taxi services around the world, what was the local transportation, has been completely disrupted by the small company called Uber that doesn't own a single car, that doesn't own or hire a single driver. And here in downtown Paris, this company was disrupting the way people were navigating the way. And I looked at the fact when I got to the yoga studio, when I was growing up, I would go to an ashram in India to practice yoga, and bearded Indian men in orange with names like Swami Vishnu Devananda and Swami Shankarananda taught me. Even that business had been disrupted with this English yoga teacher taking reservations on a phone and collecting payment from us using Square for the yoga class. So no industry is immune from this level of change. And what also struck me were all of these companies that are involved in it started as tiny, tiny businesses very recently. And interestingly, from my own perspective, all 6 of those companies I talked about actually were born within about 10, 12 miles of where I live in the Silicon Valley area. And that's a whole nother story as to why that is the case, which we can talk separately about. So it is this journey that I want to take you through and start with one company that similarly started in a garage and looked at how they have done a lot of innovation through disruption. Because when I was having dinner last night, many of you I learned were entrepreneurs still starting out, maybe just a small operation in your home, or you've got a tiny rented space somewhere, starting with one idea. And that is okay, because most of this disruption comes from companies like this. In fact, the one company I want to talk about, was actually born in this car shed. So I'm going to talk about the second most valuable company in the planet, a small internet company that I'm personally familiar with, a company called Google, that was born in that car shed. This was Google's world headquarters 17 years ago. So Google is only 17 years old, which means it is younger than any of you in the room. It was born after you were born. If Google was a human, it would still be in 11th standard. And 17 years ago, in that car shed, which belonged to my first manager at Google, Susan Wojcicki, who is now the CEO of YouTube, and an incredibly wonderful leader, as well as a very accessible person and a mother of 5 kids. And she makes it all work. So Susan had rented that garage to friends of friends, Sergey Brin and Larry Page, and that's where much of the innovation and disruption you're seeing today was born. And if you walked into that car shed, that garage, this is what you would have seen in the world headquarters of Google. Larry Page and Sergey Brin sitting at what I used to consider, or what I consider, their boardroom and the development center and the sales office, everything bundled into one. And back then, the company just had one product. It was a web page that looked like this. Okay? It had a white box where you could type in a word. It would give you back other web pages that had the same word on that, based on some ranking where they thought which page was more significant. That's all it could do. It worked in one language, English. And it was only used by a few thousand people around the Stanford area because only they had heard of it. It didn't even look very pretty in a badly designed web page, and that's because Sergey Brin, our founder, designed it himself. And to his credit, to this day, he says, Larry asked me to do it. My HTML skills are not so great, so this is the best I could. But the man must have had a vision back then, because he wrote, index contains approximately 25 million pages, soon to be much bigger. So clearly he had an idea where he was going to be taking all of it. But starting with that one product, this little white box where you could type in a few words only in English, today that white box alone has gone on to disrupt so many functions in human life, as well as so many other industries, that it is now used in a typical month. Last month, if I look at the numbers, 100 billion people, 100 billion times, 100 billion searches took place on that little white box, which is average about 50 for every person on the internet. And all of this takes place in about 120 different languages, including Malayalam, from 200 countries and territories. But it's not just that little white box. Along the way, there have been all of these innovations and products that have come. 7 of them have gone on to be mega success, which means used by at least 1 billion people around the world every single month. 7 of them. Let me see if we can name them so we'll have a little bit of audience participation going. Obviously, search is 1. What else would you put on the list? YouTube 2, Gmail 3, Android 4, someone said Chrome 5. Sorry? No. Gmail. Did somebody say Gmail? Yeah. It's actually Google Apps, just the Play Store actually reached number 7. Maps is the other one. Okay, Maps is the other one. But there are a lot of products here that you don't even recognize, right? You're all looking at it saying, what are those products? I've never heard of them. Why is that the case? Because they don't exist anymore. There are so many in this list, I don't know. That is one of the dirty little secrets of innovation. We fail far more than we succeed. Those 7 products are big success, but I can probably talk of 700 that never made it out. Most products at Google fail. And it is on the backs of those failures that we go on to build huge amount of success. We don't think of them as failure. Those are experiments. We always learn something, those things that we tried, which is why many of these products you may not even recognize. We tried it, learned something, morphed into something else. And that is part of the culture of innovation that you have to master. Try different things, learn from it, quickly keep iterating. But if you look at search alone, even though you still go back to the white box, nothing seems to have changed, right? Maybe a little bit of the look and feel. What is happening behind the white box has changed very dramatically. In fact, one of the lead engineers on Google Search was telling me one day, he asked his mother, how many people do you think work on Google Search? In fact, my own sister who lives in Trivandrum once said, she was shocked when I said, how many people work at Google? She said, what is that? It's only like a little website. But what's happening behind that white box has changed very dramatically. So let me give you an example. I'm going to try something using my phone and have a conversation with my phone so we can try this in real time. So I'll probably hold this up again. So you don't need to see what's going on. You can imagine what I'm doing with this. Okay, Google, pictures of Empire State Building.
Pictures of Empire State Building. Here you go.
Can you hear it? So it's talking to me, and it's doing it. It actually showed me the picture, so you don't need to see the screen. Okay, Google, who built it? Okay, Google, pictures of Empire State Building.
Check out these pictures for Empire State Building.
Okay, Google, who built it? Actually, lag is giving me a little bit of a problem due to the wireless. So let me try something else here. So normally it continues a conversation where if I have in a wireless connection where it behaves like a human being, it understands what I'm trying to do, it talks back to me. Now people are using the little white box to even do actions on it. So let me try one of the actions. Okay, Google, play some music. So it's going to take a few seconds. I'm going to let the silence sit to prove a point. It's pulled a song called Bamba. It's trying to play it. It's taking a few seconds, right? Can you hear it? Yeah, so it knows my taste. It's pulled out a song by a group called Touré Racial Collective. It's a Malian and Israeli musicians collaborating, okay? So it's playing one of the songs because it knows I've listened to this in the past. Now, how many of you sat there while this was playing? Stop this. How many of you sat there, a little uncomfortable with the silence, thinking, oh, this demo is not working, I feel sorry for this guy? Raise your hand if you felt a little bad, right? Okay. So that is one of the challenges of innovation. This whole thing from a computer science perspective is a miracle because I pulled out what is the size of a deck of playing cards, talked to it. It does not have any music stored here, but it reached out through a cloud somewhere, even with the slow Wi-Fi connection I have. Searched through 7 million songs, found the songs that it thinks I will like from the Touré Racial Collective, and starts playing it. All of this took about 11 seconds. 11 seconds. And you sat there saying, this is not working. This is what has happened to human expectations. This is our challenge as innovators. 11 seconds, the fact, and it did it for free. You didn't even pay for this. That's the thing, right? But people's expectations, I didn't pay any money, but it should have played it right then. This is not a demo that worked, even though from a computer science engineering perspective, what just happened is a complete miracle. And I'm not blaming anybody as end users. This is one of the challenges innovators, entrepreneurs, that the expectations are sky high and meeting them can be a real challenge. Or you can treat it as an interesting problem and try to meet those expectations and make sure that eventually we'll get it to a point where the song plays instantly, barely the words come out of your mouth, no matter what the level of Wi-Fi connection is, and it plays it immediately. So it is this kind of thinking around innovation and creating disruption that is at the DNA of any company that does it. And I'll talk about a few things about how Google itself thinks. One of the big mantras at Google of how we drive innovation, through the innovation, try to see if we can completely change how consumers experience some aspect of their life. And that way we might end up disrupting. The goal is not disruption. The goal was to solve a big problem. And an underlying mantra that drives all of that is something called Think 10x. Okay, so this is Larry Page, the CEO's mantra. The idea being, when we work on big problems, don't just improve things by 10%. Because if you improve by 10%, things do get better, but it's only an incremental improvement. If you try to make it 10 times better, then you come up with dramatic solutions. So I'll give you an example. Suppose you're transporting goods from here to Mangalore, and I come and tell you, can you solve, or you tell me, can you make it 10% better? Then I might redesign the truck, or I might teach you how to load the truck so you can take 10% more goods. Suppose you challenge me and said, no, I want to transport 10 times the same amount in in a much less time and 10% of the cost. Now I have to be really creative. I might come up with maybe train track-based solutions where I run longer trains all the way to Mangalore on a continuous basis, or I might use the waterways that exist between here and Mangalore. So I have to be really creative. So 10x thinking forces you to solve problems at a level at which the world has not seen before. And at Google, for a 10x innovation to come together, 3 things have to happen. It is when these 3 things coalesces, we really land at a fantastic 10x solution. Those 3 things being, first, a really big problem that exists in humanity that we want to solve. So far, we don't have a solution. We want to solve that problem. The second is come up with a radical solution. A radical solution meaning something that has not existed very different from anything humans have seen before. And third, it isn't enough simply if you imagine a solution, you have to have some sort of technology that enables that solution. So I can say, okay, let's lift the goods and move it by air to Mangalore, but that is not going to work unless I really design an aircraft that is capable of doing it, or some other modes of transportation. So when these three things together, we have a perfect 10x solution. So I'll give you an example, or 3 examples of how that works in practice. It is that kind of 10x thinking that led Google to innovate on a technology like the self-driving car. So this is a picture of the first version of the self-driving car. And the question is often asked, how come it is Google that came up with a self-driving car and not some company in Detroit? And that's because of this 10x thinking. There's a way by which engineers approach a problem. So the big problem they were starting off with was this, that every year, 1.8 million people die due to auto accidents. What is the population of, say, Greater Kochi? Yeah. It's a million? Okay, it's a million, right? So, or 0.7 he said. So there is roughly 2 times the population of Cochin dying every year. Okay? So imagine a scenario where 2 cities the size of Cochin get wiped out. Next year you start again and do it. That would be genocide at an unprecedented scale, but it happens every year in our lives. 94% of those accidents are caused by what? By negligence, human error. Okay? People fall asleep at the wheel, they get distracted, they try to text and drive. So that is the big problem we need to solve and prevent this. So the radical solution that they came up with was, let's take the human out of the picture and then roads will be safer. Except that is a preposterous idea. How can you have cars driving around without a human? No, but then we need some sort of breakthrough technology to enable it. And this is where the engineers argued, said, no, we are actually capable of doing this right now, because cars need to have 2 things in order to go safely. They need to know how to go from place A to place B, how to go from Cochin downtown to Tripunithara. And we already have that information on Google Maps. We tell the drivers on the phone. The second thing you need to know is what is happening in the immediate vicinity. Are there pedestrians on the street? Are there traffic signals changing? And they said, we are seeing that information today, because when the Google Street View car goes with its 4 cameras on the top, it is seeing a 360-degree view, except we don't act on that information, we just record it. So they said, using artificial intelligence techniques, we can actually tell the car what to do on a second-by-second basis. And it is that kind of 10x thinking that led to the creation of the first prototype of the self-driving car. I'll give you a little video demo of how it works. In the next video I'm going to play, you'll see Steve Mahan go take it for a test drive. He is blind. He's the president of the Santa Clara Blind Association, and he's going for a drive in the self-driving car.
Good morning, Steve. Hey, Nathaniel, how are you? Doing just great. Go ahead, Steve.
Auto driving.
Come on, no hands. No hands anywhere. No hands, no feet. No hands, no feet. Hey, anybody up for a taco? Yeah. What do you want to do today, Steve? I'm all for Taco Bell myself. All right, well, let's go get a taco at the drive-thru. And we're turning. 95% of my vision is gone. I'm well past legally blind. You lose your timing in life, everything takes you much longer. There are some places that you cannot go, there are some things that you really cannot do. Where this would change my life is to give me the independence and the flexibility to go the places I both want to go and need to go when I need to do those things.
Pretty remarkable, right? How this is going to disrupt the entire transportation industry once this is more freely available. And you might wonder, how does the car do it? So I'll take you behind the scenes on what exactly the car is seeing and the human is seeing. And the next video, one of my colleagues, Priscilla, is taking the car on a test drive. She's one of the test drivers at Google. And this is Priscilla.
I'm Priscilla, one of the test drivers on the Google self-driving car project. A big part of our job is to go out into the world and uncover all the potential scenarios that a car might encounter. Our cars treat cyclists as a special category of
So this is what is happening. This is what the human sees, and this is what the car's computer is seeing. It translates everything into its own language and color codes them. Some vehicles are dangerous or things are moving, and then it makes a decision on what to do.
Object. Watch in this example, when the cyclist holds up his arm, our software detects the hand signal and predicts his movement into our lane. The car knows to continue yielding to the cyclist passing by, even when he changes his mind, multiple times.
Okay? So pretty amazing how using AI techniques they're able to do it. Before I go any further, MSA, how much time do we have since we started late? So go ahead. Okay. So I'll give you another example of 10x thinking. It is this project called Project Loon. And here, this group of engineers are trying to solve another big problem that exists in humankind today. That is, everybody here has free access, not free meaning you have access to the internet. But that's only 2 billion or so, the world's population. 5 billion people in the world still do not have access to the internet. It's hard for us to imagine, but that is the case. And there are practical limitations to how we can solve the problem. In fact, the economics of the problem are such that in the southern hemisphere, 80% of the people in the southern hemisphere would have to pay 1 month's salary today to get an internet connection. So it is prohibitively expensive, and traditional solutions like running cable to the house or wireless solutions is not going to solve the problem. So this is what the Google team has been looking at, and they want to come up with different innovative solutions, and that is what led to one of the experiments that they're running. And here they use natural resources. They use balloon-powered internet reflectors, so to speak. So the idea behind this, what if we beam an internet signal to the sky and put a giant reflector there and reflected it across a large base? Then we'll be, especially in places like Indonesia, which has got several thousand islands, this way we get internet capacity distributed over a large area. So that is the thinking behind this. And it's called a Project Loon because of 2 reasons. It uses natural resources a lot. It uses wind power and solar, using these balloons that lift the internet amplifier payload up into the sky and float around in the sky. It's also called Project Loon for the second reason, that even by Google's crazy standards, we think it is such a crazy lunatic project, and that's why we call it Project Loon. So here the idea is that these balloons will sit up there and float, and you send an internet signal, and they distribute it over like a 100-mile radius area. But the problem is the balloon cannot stay in one place. You can't tether these balloons. They are at about 60,000 feet or so, twice the height of where commercial airlines fly. So they're above the airspace, but they move around. So we let them move around. They will float as the wind carries them all the way. We let them drift about 100 miles in one direction. One of the capabilities we have is vast computational power and engineers who think algorithmically. So what they've figured out is that with enough data which we can get from weather bureaus, factors like how much solar energy exists and what the wind force is, we can accurately calculate which way the wind will blow and at what speed. So we let the balloon float for about 100 miles, and then we raise it or lift it, catch another wind going in the other direction, and now the balloon travels 100 miles in this way. Then we raise it or lower it, and then we let it go back. So we keep it within 100 miles going back and forth, and keep the balloon within a certain area, or hundreds of balloons. So that is how this project is trying to solve this big problem of trying to bring internet at a very low cost to billions of people who don't have access today. This is on a mass mega scale. We also think of tiny problems that can be solved using technology at a very, very tiny, minuscule level. For example, this contact lens here. This is a project that's called Project Iris. And here the engineers are solving a problem that exists among human beings today, which is the problem of type 3 diabetes. So I don't know the numbers here, but it runs upward of between 1 and 2 million people in the US suffer from type 3 diabetes. And if you have it, or if you have a family member who has it, you know, it's a painful condition. You have to prick your finger, get a drop of blood, and regularly to look at what is your sugar level. It is an invasive process just to determine if your insulin level needs a boost or not. And one of the engineers who works on it, Baber, has got a particularly passionate mission around it because his mother has it, and once when she was driving around, her sugar level dropped, she had a blackout and got involved in an accident. She survived the accident, but he's been determined to find a much more humane solution to this problem. And the problem that they're trying to address is, how do you know what the blood glucose level is in a non-invasive way? So this is the big problem. The radical solution, do it in a non-invasive way. The breakthrough technology came when they said, teardrops have some blood glucose content in them. So if you measure the blood glucose level in teardrops, then we can actually determine if that person needs a boost of insulin or not. And that's what this project is trying to do. So if you look in the contact lens, embedded between the two skins of the lens is enough technology that monitors every 5 minutes, once you insert it in your eye, what's going on with your teardrops, and then can communicate and let you know what your blood glucose level is. Okay? So this is the kind of innovation that comes about, which leads to then subsequently disruption and great products and services to mankind when you adopt 10x thinking. Going from 10x thinking then, another principle that drives much of how Google functions is this notion that when it comes to innovation, everybody is free to innovate, the entire company. There is no innovation department. There is no chief innovation officer in the company. In fact, nobody's title has innovation formally in the title. So that question comes up. If nobody's in charge of innovation, who is responsible? And the founder's mantra is, it is everyone. Sometimes it can come from the top. Sometimes it can come from somewhere deep in the organization. So let me give you an example of either kind. So this is an example of innovation that has been driven right from the top. That is Sergey Brin, who's had a very strong vision around wearable computing. And what he's gone on to create around that is this product that has almost become like the 79th organ in the human body. In fact, it behaves like an organ. I touch it, it responds. So it's got a skin. It's got eyes. It recognizes objects and faces around me. And in fact, it's giving you directions to go somewhere. So it has got a voice because it talks to me. And when it talks to me, none of you hear it because it's using ocular bone conductivity to send the sound signals right here behind my ear. It's got a mouth. It communicates with me. It's got ears. When I talk, it listens to me. It understands me. And it's got a brain because through this, I'm now plugged in to all of the recorded human knowledge and wisdom that is out there that is publicly available through this internet connection that this device supports. So it expands my brain capacity in an infinite level. So for example, I can say, okay, Glass, what is the capital of Mount Everest? And right now it showed the number and it told it to me in my ear, and it's doing it in non-metric units because that's how we work in the US. It told me 29,029 feet. I say, okay, Glass, what is the capital of Burkina Faso? And again, I heard it. It says Ouagadougou. So to that extent, and all of a sudden, my brain capacity is expanded, and we all become so much more smarter. Let me give you a little demo of how the product works.
Here are the basics of how to use Glass. This is your touchpad. It runs from your temple to your ear. Tap the touchpad to wake up Glass. You should see the display above your line of sight. Adjust it to see everything. The home screen shows a clock. This is your timeline. It's a row of cards. Things to the left are happening now or coming up, like the weather, an upcoming flight, or an event in your calendar. You can tap on any card to see more. Swipe down anywhere to go back to the timeline. Cards to the right of the home screen are from the past, for example, messages, videos, or photos. Tap on a photo to share it, and choose one of your friends. Swipe down to go back to standby. And have fun exploring.
So it's told to go for another 10 minutes, and AJ, can you put 10 on the clock? So this is a remarkable piece of wearable computing that the team has come up with and is still in the process of developing and see where all this will go. So I have a question for you. Given that this is like a physical product with camera and video and the ability to communicate to the internet, et cetera, how long do you think it would take to build a prototype of a product? There's no right or wrong answer. I want to hear some guesses. How long will it take? 1 year, 2 years? 5 years, yeah. 1, 2, 5. These are normal depending on what sort of process you use. But from a perspective of innovation, especially in a fast innovation leading to disruption, at Google we follow a principle of rapid prototyping. So using rapid prototyping principles, this product was actually prototyped in the first version in 90 minutes. 90 minutes. So you might wonder, how come? What is possible in 90 minutes? This was the first version of Google Glass that was built in 90 minutes. So what the engineer did is he bought a pair of ski goggles, took a regular laptop computer, put it in a backpack, he got it from the Google store, got all the cables from the Google Tech Stop, and plugged it together, and then you need camera, visor, earbuds, etc. Bought off-the-shelf components you get in an electronic store, put it together, walks into Sergey's office, and functionally the team showed them and said, this is what wearable computing could look like. It was heavy, it was 3,500 grams at the time, and it didn't look very pretty. You would not wear this and walk through an airport or through the street because you'd look silly. But functionally, they said this is where wearable computing could go. Then they used rapid prototyping, tried different things. So for the next version, they said, oh, I went too fast. They said, we don't need a whole laptop. A smartphone can do the same. So they put a smartphone taped onto the glass, and that's how they kept iterating. 6 months, they had gone to a version that weighed about 450 grams. Another 6 months, they had iterated to a point where they built this version. This is about 75 grams, less than a pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses. And that's where rapid prototyping takes you. But I also said innovation can come from somewhere deep in the organization if you have a good idea and a strong conviction and have the data to argue, because it is not based by the level you are in the organization. It's based on the power of your idea. Idea backed by data trumps everything else. And that is the freedom you need to give to your organizations as you build it up. That everyone has the power to be innovative, everyone has the power to speak up and come up with a good idea if they can show a prototype, if they can show the data behind it. So here's an example of how that works in a place like Google. And I'll use my friend Dr. Ronnie Zeiger as an example. And he's Dr. Ronnie Zeiger, not because of a PhD degree, he's actually a medical doctor who used to work at Google. He was working on Google Health. And as a medical doctor, he was deeply troubled by a piece of data that he saw. And that was the number of times searches were taking place for the term suicide on Google search. And as a medical doctor, it disturbed him because he knows it is a serious problem in our society, depression and the problems associated with that leading to suicide. In the US, 88 people end their lives every single day. 22 veterans kill themselves every single day. And as a medical doctor, he saw the number. And he looked at the results that came up, and the Google search engine in all its beauty and perfection, the algorithm was delivering a search result that told you how to commit suicide, because that was the most relevant. But as a medical doctor, he felt when someone types in suicide, we have a moral obligation to help that person because it is a human being's desperate cry for help. But except that was heresy, because we never doctor the search engine. We never change the results artificially. But as a doctor, he showed the data, he argued persuasively, and thanks to his persuasion, there's a piece of innovation that we introduced years ago, and that is now if you type suicide, the first result that comes up, you see the red phone symbol, it is a 1-800 number for the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. The day we introduced it, the call volume to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline went up by 9%. 9%. And there were hundreds of more people who were calling in, and then they were being persuaded from ending their life. And you can try it in India, the number that, because we've introduced this innovation across the world now. In India, it brings up the AASRA, is that the organization? That is, yeah, it brings up that organization and their number, the hotline for that. So this is an example of anybody is free to innovate, and an innovation like this actually goes on to then save many human lives. A third big principle of innovation that permeates the organization is default to open. And this is the simple acceptance of the fact that we throw up all of our systems and processes. We build open platforms where others can come and innovate on top of the platform. We don't try to do it all ourselves. And the logic that drives that, and which should be even more important for a small startup organization, is you might be just 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 people, but the smartest people who can actually innovate in your particular niche probably work outside of the company. And today, by defaulting to open, by taking advantage of those systems that are available, maybe it's payment tools and maybe pieces of software and code, by bolting onto other platforms, you can actually very quickly build a solution by defaulting to open. And here we take full advantage of the fact that there are smart people out there who can help us innovate. And it's not just with technology, we do this with data, we do it with marketing ideas. So here's an example of that. If you look at something like Google Maps, a challenge for a product like that is that anytime we built a version of the map that we think is comprehensive, in 5 minutes we've fallen behind because information changes, street names change constantly. So we threw the maps open and we asked people around the world, say, keep your maps updated. You know the information best, so you do it with us. So we're not trying to keep Google Maps updated entirely on our own. That would be an impossible job. So for example, you take a place like Alapi or Kottayam, there is information about Kottayam that is available only to the people who live there, much better than some team of data analysts at Google can. So a few years ago, I'll show you the map of Kottayam as the months go by, how the local residents are keeping their maps updated. And by defaulting to open, we now have a rich view of Kottayam. And that is just one example. Thousands of cities around the world, Jamaica, in Poland, Karachi, are all updated by the residents because we have defaulted to open and get them to do it with us. So as you can see, by the time we got to November 2012 and beyond, the information about Kottayam has been filled out much more richly. We also do it with marketing ideas. So for example, if I were to try to explain to my mother how to use voice search, I will very quickly lose her because I get very complex in my explanation with my engineering speak and business school speak. And sometimes we feel our customers can actually do a much better job. So by defaulting to open, we invite them to explain these complex concepts. So let me show you how the Paul brothers explained voice search in a way that my mother in Thrissur will understand. These are the Paul brothers.
This is how it works. So each person would say Chubby Bunny into the speaker like this. Chubby Bunny. Then it would say working here. If it says that, then they get the point. It doesn't? No. Okay.
Which one will go first?
Alright, let's start off with 2.
Chubby Bunny.
Okay, it's working, it's working. Yeah, that's great. That sounded good. Okay. Come on, TJ. Chubby Bunny. It's working, it's working. Oh!
4. Alright.
Chubby Bunny. It's working. Do you think he's gonna get that?
I think he's gonna get that.
Working.
Alright. It's up to you, TJ. With 4. Alright.
Chubby Bunny.
He lost. Let's see. And I would like to say, slam!
So this, my mother would understand much better how to use voice search. And if you notice a couple of things, we couldn't have paid $1 million to a creative agent. More importantly, did you see the age of those people who are demonstrating? We can't hire them legally. But by defaulting to open, all the creative horsepower of people out there who want to work with us, now we are able to tap into. And it's a clever way by expanding the reach and scope of your company, no matter how small you are. I want to end with one final principle in the last couple of minutes, and that is to have a strong sense of, just advancing forward, a mission. A very strong sense of mission is what drives everyone forward at Google to innovate, to disrupt, to solve big problems that exist on humanity. And you talk to any of the 53,000 people at Google, they always feel that the work they do actually touches the lives of millions of people in a very positive way. But we all have our own versions of what that means to us. So I will end with actually a personal story on what it means to me in terms of having a very strong mission, which is what drives me to think innovatively in a disruptive way every single day. To explain that, I want to take you back to my own roots in Kerala here, and that is this tiny rice farming village called Chittilanjeri. It's in Palghat district and next to Nemara. And this is where my grandparents were modest rice farmers in this village. And you would know, your families might have the same kind of background. And this is where my parents grew up. It's my mother's village, and my father was in the neighboring village of Chittilanjeri. And they had a very modest kind of life growing up in a rural Kerala setting. And the only education they got was 10 years of schooling in the local village school. They don't have a college education. But they created the circumstances so that their 4 kids, me and my 3 siblings, went on to get 10 college degrees, including 2 from US Ivy League business schools, even though my parents had never set foot in America. So we are often asked the question, what caused that kind of social mobility in one generation? And there is very simply access to information, but it was very slow access. I remember when I was graduating from NIT and wanted to look at what graduate schools, what master's programs I may apply to, and I had to take an 8-hour train trip all the way to Chennai from Tiruchirappalli so that I could get access to a guide, the US World News Guide to Graduate Schools. 8-hour train journey. Now, you saw what happened today. 8 seconds is too long. On a phone, if you don't get the information, you get restless. But there's still access to information. Now, when I go back to that village school and look at any rural school in Kerala like this, it reminds me of what my parents would have gone to, except for one difference. For kids going to those kind of schools in rural Kerala, or in the story happens anywhere in the world, if they have access to computers and the kind of services that we are building, all of you are building, they now have access to the same amount of information as somebody who goes to an IIT or Harvard University. In an era where information is like oxygen, the work we are doing is leveling the playing field for humanity. And that is my inspiration. And it doesn't end with that. It still gets even more personal the way Google is trying to push the boundaries. So for example, there are a lot of people in the world with some sort of a disability. Actually, it's about 1 billion people have some sort of a disability. And my father is one of them as well. A few years ago, watching me speak in the US, he was watching it through a live stream here in Thrissur. He had a fall, and as a fall, he injured his spinal cord. He became paralyzed from the neck down. In an instant, it changed the trajectory of our family. And we had to respond to that situation. And we've been working on rehabilitating him to respond to being paralyzed from the neck down. And some amount of movement has come, but it's not a level of independence that he used to experience. But little step by step, we're trying to see if we can improve the quality of his life. And there's a lot of innovation that Google is doing in that realm too, even though it's a population not many people may look at, the disabled population. For us, it is an important group that we want to bring solutions. And it gets personal for me. So one of the solutions we built is actually a device that will allow people with disabilities, like with a tremor in the hand, to be able to feed themselves so they have a sense of
Tremor, whether from essential tremor or Parkinson's disease, takes away from this experience, forcing people to focus instead on the basic task of eating. Currently, there's no cure for these disorders, and the solutions out there often fall short or are invasive. After seeing some of my own friends struggling with their tremor, I realized the frustration, loss of dignity, and social isolation that tremor can have. We invented the Liftware spoon to cancel hand tremor and take the frustration out of eating. For the first time, we have the technology to actively stabilize a person's tremor in a device so small that it fits in your hand. The spoon works by sensing a person's tremor and intelligently stabilizing itself to make the food's journey from the plate to the mouth much easier.
So on this trip, I actually brought one of this for my dad to try, and we are experimenting with it to see where even if your hand shakes, you're able to feed yourself and have that sense of dignity. And it is these kind of projects that my colleagues do that give me that deep sense of personal mission and why I want to innovate every single day and disrupt entire industries so that we can really change quality of life for human beings everywhere. Thank you. Namaste.
It was a great one, Gopi, and I have one quick announcement to make. He has recently published a book by name Internet to Internet, which uses a blend in terms of balance in life, from, I think you say, from yoga mat and meditation cushion to the professional life. So this is a very recently published book. I have the privilege of inviting our president, A.V. George, to release this book to one of the startups in Palghat district, since he is also from Palghat, Kiran Kumar from Life Tree Agronuts. Will you please come to the stage? I also take this opportunity to hand over a memento. Nandakumar, will you please come on stage? Nandakumar to hand over the memento to Gopi Kalai. So George Cora is after my blood now. You are the only person who exceeded the time, but I am sure it was worth it. I remember 2 Tycons back, we had an astronaut. Last Tycon, we had a mountaineer. Today we have, I don't know to call him an innovator or a disruptor. You are both Gopi. Thanks for coming all the way from San Francisco to Kochi to delight us with this kind of a talk. Thank you very much.